Hello, Vaughn.
Hello, Harold.
Hey, this week ends with news that the BCGEU strike is heading to non-binding arbitration.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be a big sigh of relief I think the government is looking for an exit strategy. I think people that depend on government services even though the strike isn't ending, but they will at least have some hope. And I think those union members walking the picket line and they're getting $130 for a 4 hour shift. They must be hurting financially too after what was 7 weeks. So
Yes.
I think this is really good news. And of course, Vince Reddy. Uh, I wrote about him 30 years ago. I was referring to him as the legendary Vince Reddy. So I don't know what adjective we have for him now, but he does have a reputation of finding a face-saving way for both sides. And if he can pull it off here, he will have done everybody a major service. I don't think the government wants to have to give up a whole lot more money, but I don't think the union really wants this strike to continue either. So there's a potential there for a face-saving trade-off for both sides, and I wish him well, but he does have a good reputation.
It would take us all day to go through Vince Reddy's CV, but I mean, do are there one or two memorable examples of his work
Oh,
that come to mind for
he's
you?
he's been in everything, teachers' disputes, and he's been in with the government before, public and private. I mean, he was rumored to be retiring 20 years ago, and people said, "Oh my God, we got to talk him out of this," right? He does have associates, he has people that work with him, but no, he's something else. He
It,
really he really if he didn't exist, we would have to invent him here in British Columbia with our long history of labor relations. But the amazing thing about him is that his reputation is so good that when his name is suggested, labor and management both, yep, exactly. Yeah, no, we'll take Vince Reddy, right? Like everybody has faith in his ability to find that middle ground. So I think this is really good news for both sides. And when you look right at it in detail, the union wants a face-saving way out. The strike has gone on longer, I think, than they expected. And the government wants a way out because it's gone on longer than they expected. And they really need to be able to say, the government and the union to say, well, that's what Vince Reddy recommended, so I guess we better do it, right? So that's, as I said, that's the optimistic view of what's happened here. But a dispute where both sides were dug in and didn't seem to be going anywhere, this is very encouraging.
okay. Not so encouraging and somewhat shocking was the resignation this week of seven doctors in Kamloops.
Yeah, the government had a big good news announcement on the healthcare thing Tuesday morning. The new medical school in Surrey, and they're now taking applications for the first cohort of doctors. So there'll be 48 doctors, potential doctors, going in a year from now. And, they got asked about, well, what about all the troubles in the healthcare sector? And they said, oh, well, we're working on it, before the day was out. This letter became public that seven obstetrician gynecologists at Royal Inland Hospital in Kamloops had all resigned. The health region had met with them on the weekend, I guess tried to talk them out of it, didn't succeed. And it's a crisis that's been building there for 2 or 3 years. Workload, patient safety, resources, staffing, and the doctors had finally had it enough. They say they've got a 90-day transition strategy. So they're saying, patients should still show up at Royal Inland and you'll get looked after. But we'll remember that last spring, starting in May, you had the pediatric unit at Kelowna General Hospital shutting down, reduced operations, completely shut down for like 6 weeks, and then reduced operations for another 6. And the thing about both these is These are not small communities.
Right.
Yes, we've seen ERs closing all over in smaller communities, and I don't make light of it, but we've had the ER close in Delta too. And these are major, major closures. So it's just an emphasis on an underscoring how much trouble there is still in the healthcare system after years of government saying it's working on it and hiring more people and recruiting more people and putting more money into the system, and the troubles continue.
Well, the solution seems to be bringing in OBGYNs from other jurisdictions
Yeah.
and paying them handsomely locums to do so. But is there enough capacity in these other jurisdictions to move people from one place to another?
Well, that's a problem because there's a shortage right across Canada of this. Now, the premier got asked about the new medical school, and
Vaughn, with the medical school in Surrey, 38 doctors, any requirement that they stay in BC?
they're going to try to keep them here by ensuring that a lot of their training is community based. So in Surrey and in other communities around the province. So they're going to emphasize that. But, I had no idea. I'd heard figures in the thousands of dollars to fill in shifts on Salt Spring and Maple Ridge, but that's how much medical services are in demand. And you can only, even with this medical school is great news, and eventually,
Right.
by the middle of the next decade, there'll be 120 doctors. But there's a huge shortage too, and we hear stories of Canadians can't get into a medical school.
All right, Vaughn, one last thing. Mark Carney was making some comments on bail reform, promising
Yes.
legislation next week. What are we expecting?
Well, I thought our Attorney General Nikki Sharma set the right tone yesterday. She said that she followed the Prime Minister's news release and his press conference, and she was encouraged that he had picked up on the concerns that British Columbia has led the way on this issue. Repeat violent offenders, sexual offenses, stronger sentencing, less bail. She said she liked that part. But she also said, I'm going to wait and see the legislation. And that is wise because she's been there before. I mean,
Yes.
very early in his time as premier, David Eby pressured the Trudeau government, joined other provinces, and pressured them for bail reform and all these same concerns. And the Trudeau government grudgingly, I say grudgingly, because I don't think they really believe in the issue, gave them a version of bail reform, which turned out to be inadequate. So Sharma, to me, is quite right by saying, I'm going to wait and see the legislation. I think we also need to see whether the legislation survives court challenges, because the thing to keep in mind is this catch and release justice system that we have in Canada is a product of the legal judicial establishment in Canada, which, believes in bail for everyone and doesn't believe in locking people up. And so, I think the reason Ottawa was hesitant last time is because they didn't really believe in it. Carney's saying all the right language this time, but yeah, let's wait and see what's in the legislation. And then let's see whether the legislation actually brings any changes to the kinds of horror stories we've seen way too many of here in British Columbia.
Well, let's talk about that legislation when we pick up our conversation next week. And with, if I guess if Vince Reddy can work his mediation magic, maybe we'll also be talking about the end of the BCGU strike.
And we've got the legislature back in session next week and more bills coming. So lots to talk about as well. And we'll see how the Conservatives are doing.
Oh, yes. Can't lose sight of that.
I shouldn't laugh, but some of the stuff they've been doing lately, it's hard not to laugh.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Vaughn. Have a wonderful week.